So we're going to discuss the role of the valuation surveyor, right? All right, let me try here. Good. Right. So what is a valuation report? This is defined as the basic inspection of a property that will be used to determine its value in the market. The value is determined by its location and condition. Who is a valuer? A valuer is a professional who carries out inspections using different methodologies to determine market value of a property. Now, these methodologies, there are various methodologies. 2 or 3 of them that valuers used are called the income approach, the comparative approach, which I think Karen mentioned some time ago, and the cost approach. The methodology used by the valuer will be determined by the purpose of the valuation, right? Now, what is market value? This is defined as the opinion of what a property is worth within a competitive real estate market. This is determined by supply and demand and the comparison of similar properties within a geographic location. So what market value is determined, as Karen mentioned before, by analyzing sales data, sales transactions. The valuer needs to understand and figure out how persons would respond to a property if it was placed on an open market. So why is it important to have a valuation done when selling or buying the property? Very good question. Why do I need a valuation? I can sell my property for anything I want to sell it for, right? I'm in Tivoli Gardens, right? And I spend $30 million to build my property, so I want to sell my property for $30 million in Tivoli Gardens, so I don't need any valuation surveyor. Well, let's look into it and see why we need a valuation. So we're going to separate the 2 sections. We're going to be looking at the selling aspect, and then we're going to be looking at the buyer's aspect. So it's important to do a valuation when selling property because you want to achieve the maximum return on your investment. Remember now, right, that a real estate is an investment as any other investment, right? You invest in stocks, right? And when you invest in stocks, you want to be able to get maximum returns on your investment over time, right? But how will you determine this? This is where the valuer comes in as it relates to real estate. The valuer will analyze the market in detail so that he can determine the highest return that your investment can get when it is placed on the market. Now, there are different types of properties, so there are different types of ways the valuer will analyze a property. So, for example, if you have a regular residential lot, right, then the valuer may analyze market data, as was stated before by Karen and I mentioned earlier. But let's just say it's a commercial property. This is now an income-generating property. What the valuer would really rely on? He would more than likely rely on income, because whoever is going to be buying the property is going to be buying the property to receive an income, and the valuer would use an analysis known as the income approach. So it's very important, the type of property that is being analyzed, and the valuer is trained to assess that property based on what the land is being used as. For example, everybody probably knows where Pulse is, right? Pulse is a commercial property on Trafalgar Road. But right beside it is a residential house, right? How would you analyze that property? Would you look at comparable data, or would you assess it as a commercial property? These are things that the valuer is trained to do. We are trained to determine the land use and find the highest and best use for the property, align it to a methodology that can influence the highest return for the investment. So the valuer is trained to use different methodologies to arrive at a suitable price to influence a suitable price influenced by market. So when selling a property, who should seek advice from the valuer? Well, a lot of people, again, just decide that they want to ask anything for their property. But it is advised that you seek the advice from a professional valuer. So persons who are selling, like developers, financial institutions, and homeowners, and even agents sometimes, will need guidance of a valuation surveyor so they know how much to ask for the property. This sometimes can be very difficult because, especially with a few members of these lists, because especially for a developer, they want the highest return as it relates to the developer's profit. And they may not be necessarily influenced by market. They are more influenced by how much return they can get after construction is done. So that's why a lot of times the developers choose not to consult with a valuation surveyor. But a lot of times, if they do consult with the valuation surveyor, you realize that their properties would probably have been sold quicker than before. The thing is, demand outweighs supply. And because demand outweighs supply, properties will sell. But how quickly they will sell is another thing. The valuation surveyor is able to advise the developer as to the right price so that he can get a quick sale or quick enough sale, reflective of market trends, that he can receive profit and not earn any losses on his investment. The financial institution normally needs the valuer because they might be selling properties as well. The financial institutions sometimes foreclose on properties, and so they need to recoup back the investment that they have made into a property, right? Because of default from the mortgage payer. Homeowners, again, need valuers because at the end of the day, they are looking to get the highest from their return. They may be selling to leave the country, various reasons. So homeowners would need valuers. Again, a lot of times, they decide to just ask anything, and it ends up a lot of time that the property stays on the market more than it needs to. The agents more or less have a better experience in the market, and with MLS, they are able to analyze the market so as we are able to analyze the market. But sometimes there are special properties that may come up, and they may require a certain level of methodology or approaches to be used to determine market value, and so the agent will consult with evaluations. So the importance of valuation when buying a property is very important. So you don't want to start the race in the negative, right? Now, when you're purchasing property, you don't want to buy the property for more than it's worth. You don't want to do that at all. I have had a situation in 2006 where the purchaser bought a property in Havendale. I think about 2006 for $25 million, right? But the property is a special type of property. It's very small. It's not a regular size house, and lot, I should say. And the building is a 2-story, but it needed repairs. And they bought it for $25 million in 2005. When it was 2000, I think it was about 18, they tried to sell the property, and they advertised the property for the same price at which they bought it for in 2005, and the property could not be sold. The highest offer they got was $21 million. So my point is, you want to make sure that when you're starting the race, you're starting the race ahead of the game. You don't want to pay catch up. You don't want to have to, after a long time, you're trying to catch up the price that you initially bought it for. So that is why it is very important that you get in contact with a valuation surveyor, right? That can advise you, and you listen to them as it relates to the market, what the property can fetch. So you'd want to make sure that you're paying market value or below market value. You want a deal, right? Or you're paying market value. You really don't want to start out of the blocks losing. The valuer will identify any potential issue relating to the property. So there are certain things that the valuer is trained to observe, right? As it relates to erosion of the site, condition of the building, makeup of the building, and we'll get into that.